Brakes. What are they good for? They're good for stopping the car. But somehow in this car, there were 2 points that were quite lacking. First of all, in the modulation of the brake, and the other one in the actual long-term braking performance. By long-term, I meant really up in the mountains. We were doing our road trip in the Alps. You notice that after you had to do a lot of descents with a lot of corners and accelerating between the corners, having to brake hard again, the brakes just started to show some fading. After 5, 6 turns, you didn't really notice anything, but after 20 turns, 25 turns, you just start to think that, hey, I need to press the pedal even harder to get the same deceleration. And I wasn't used to that. The carbon ceramics didn't have that at all. And I think the braking systems of the car that will replace this one won't have that either. And it just takes a little bit of confidence away from tackling the mountain pass downhill when you're braking time after time for every corner. And you don't have that feeling of confidence after 20 or 25 turns. Now, most people won't drive that fast down the mountain, but it's the way I like to drive. And the brakes just don't have that ability to cope with that. The second point of the braking that I don't like is the modulation. And that is how many different versions of hard braking you have. And that might sound really strange, but you have light braking, a little more braking, a little more than a little more braking, and you have hard braking, very hard braking, and then locking. And that all those different ranges, I say, is the modulation of the braking powers. How many different ways of hard braking you can have? It's very hard to explain. But I guess in a way, the carbon ceramics, I would say, had about 10 different ranges, 10 different ways of braking, from very light to locking the wheels. And this Carrera T seems to just have 3 or 4. You know, you have the light braking, a bit harder braking, hard braking, very hard braking, and then you lock wheels. So it kind of gives you less range, less possibilities of braking, and because of that, less confidence of whether you're actually braking hard enough, because you have less modulation in the pedal. And I don't think there's really anything I could do to change it, because the restrictions of that are the brake pads, the brake disc size, maybe the brake oil, but everything is just really good in this car. It's just less. And I really wanted to go back to the feeling that I had with the carbon ceramics, where I was very confident on the brakes. I always knew I could brake harder, even if I was braking really hard, because the modulation was so much greater than in this car. In this car, many times I think I'm on the limit, and I am, because if I brake a little bit harder, the wheels will lock. So that lack of modulation also gives me less confidence. And in a way, it takes a little bit away from the dynamics of driving a car really fast. Now, this doesn't mean that the brakes aren't good. They are very good. And I think for 95% of the time I drive it, they're actually more than enough, and I have absolutely no issues with them. And I think for most people who drive this car to drive it spiritedly, and maybe on a daily, maybe on the normal roads, normal speeds, you'll never need anything more than the standard brakes. But if you're really going to start pushing the limits, and certainly if you're going to go on a track and really exploit the performance of the car, the standard brakes will just be lacking compared to the carbon ceramics or to the bigger steel brakes in other car models. And that's really the main reason why I chose to change this car for another one, the braking system.